Hey everyone, we're back in the shop today. Got a day off work, so the plan is to have some fun in the shop working on the Nemesis. Today is going to be, we'll call it turbo mount slash up pipe day. So one of the tricky parts of fitting this engine into this car and getting everything to go is that there's tight space all around, and the normal plumbing for the turbo and the up pipe that's used to be able to come up from the headers to the turbo just aren't going to fit in the location that we need, the way that we had to do the chassis around everything. So we need to find a way to be able to make everything work, and that's kind of the goal for today. So we're going to take a look at the car here. So the way that the Subaru engine is set up is that we have our headers down here coming out of the bottom of the car, both sides of the bank, so the horizontal opposed engine. And in the case of this vehicle, since it is an EJ207, is that we have a twin scroll turbo coming off. That means that we've got two of the different pipes coming across here with the two ones coming up instead of a standard single up pipe. Now that needs to come up where the turbo typically would be sitting, would be right up in here. But as we can see, we have chassis bars and all of these sorts of things sitting here. So instead, what I'm looking to try to do is mount the turbo right up about here. Now, looking through our designs that we're doing for our body styles and stuff like that, we should have still enough clearance over top of the turbo there. We can see that our up pipe needs to come up in through here, so it's going to kind of snake its way through here through the suspension and up. Need to make sure that we're clearing the prop shaft that's coming across from the bottom of the transmission. And then just trying to find a way to mount this on top here. So essentially the overall bit here is where instead of having the down pipe traditionally coming out of the back of the Subaru Turbo, this is going to go straight into a cat and into a muffler system coming out over top, directly over top of the back of the transmission. Now, then we need to take our exhaust, or the outlet of the turbo here, going to probably have to snake it down in here, somewhere around there, to be able to come back around and feed the intercooler at the top, which then comes down into the intake manifold, and likely seeing if I can take the air inlet of the turbo here and run it up into this kind of air box that we're building up here as well. So we've got some kind of inlet or channel coming down into the inlet of the turbo. So that's generally what we're trying to do. So I need to figure out a way to try to fabricate up the up pipe and the mounting spots there to kind of hold the turbo generally in that position. So I can reroute, you know, these hoses and stuff on the other side that gives me clearance for the coolant drain pipe. You know, in general, I think this should work. I think we might be able to put maybe the reservoir here for the coolant. Yeah, still trying to figure out exactly how everything's all gonna go. So that's the project for today. We'll see. We'll see how far we get on this. There's definitely a lot of different moving parts trying to make everything fit. So we'll see how this all goes. All right, we've got our trusty up pipe here. We can see we've got, this is essentially where it's going to connect onto the headers, and up here is where it mounts onto the turbo. We can see that it's got the different studs on each of the different mounting points here. So our goal here is probably just to cut off right about here on both of these, and then we're going to have to do some directing of those tubes once we get there. So I want a fairly round section that we're dealing with so that we don't have to do a lot of crazy stuff with the welding. But then I'm going to get this heat shield off here as well, just to clear everything off, and then we'll start from there and see what kind of mounting brackets that we can create. All right, we've got everything separated now. We've got the top of the up pipe, bottom of the up pipe. We can see the two different tubes that were left over there. So general idea here, right, is the bottom fits right onto the bottom of the turbo, slides in, that's what mounts up. The studs are what connects the turbo onto that mount. Now, what I'm trying to do is figure out a good way to be able to essentially solidly mount this to the chassis. There'll then be a flex pipe between here and the pipes coming down to the actual headers, so that'll give a little bit of flex for when the engine's moving around in the chassis and that we don't get any cracks in the pipes. That's a general thought. Now, what I'm looking at doing is possibly using something like this angle iron here to basically weld along the sides to give myself a flange to weld and build some boxes off of, instead of trying to build right onto the actual pipe flange itself. So this will give me some kind of, I guess you'd call more meat, or different ways that I can attach different things onto here, and see if I can get like a nice structure. The 90-degree angle here is going to give me a lot of support for any place that I want to run this to. So that's generally the idea. We'll see how I can do this and get everything all mounted onto this flange to make it all nice and sturdy, because, well, that turbo is heavy. It is quite heavy, so we want to make sure that we've got a good, sturdy, solid mount for any place where we're mounting that onto the car. I guess we'll get started on that next phase. Okay, here's the plan. Managed to get all the welding done around the flange for the up pipe, cut off the back end of the down pipe. I'm still going to need to do some different shaping on the back and the down pipe, but I think I can use it. I just kind of welded it in place, just a couple tack welds to hold everything still. So this turbo is heavy, and I'm going to need a good amount of bracing to be able to hold it solid onto the chassis, and then of course doing some flex tube on the up pipe. Now, if we take a look at what we've got, essentially I've located the turbo kind of midway along here. The down pipe obviously will get cut off right about here and then reshaped coming back into the exhaust, but for now I'm able to tack weld that on to kind of hold it in place. So goal is to essentially create a brace off of the welded onto the actual downpipe housing, the bell mouth, and then a connection point here to hold weight. Same thing will go on the other side over here as well. Something that's going to somehow hold some weight. Maybe it's going to come off of the bell mouth as well down here, or off of the actual bracket to bolt, and find ways to be able to hold this whole flange solid on the chassis so that you could basically jump on it. And then same thing on the back over here, so everything is held secure. Now, if I have it all set up like that, it looks like I should have a straight shot down from the turbo down here, run my rubber hosing to be able to then plumb my intercooler piping coming from the turbo down and snake it around to be able to get to the front. So that should give me some room there. It is offset from the intercooler intake coming in, so I should be able to run some kind of plenum coming up into this air box of some sort. So that's as good as I think I'm going to get. There's just not a lot of room, and I want to be able to create, a plane on the top of the car here that it's not too high on the back, but I still need to make up some room on the back to be able to put the exhaust out. So I think that's going to be my best position for it, leaving enough room underneath the turbo there as well to be able to put my clutch actuator and being able to create a bracket down there for it. I think that should work. Same thing goes for my tubing coming out of the bottom here. I should be able to run those tubes down through any which way through here to snake it through to get down to that up pipe. So we need to get down to there and then up to these, to the turbo. So I think that's what I'm going to be able to do. Now it's just a matter of trying to create and fabricate some support braces and put them in place to hold everything solid. So we'll get to work on that. Okay, progress. So what I did is I created some little angle brackets down here on the side, and I welded in a nut into the chassis so that I could bolt it on here. So I did the same thing on both sides, and then ran essentially a square tube up to the top of the downpipe here. Everything's just tack welded in place to be able to hold it. But the idea here is I can actually kind of box in and change whatever I want around this downpipe here. And essentially, I'll probably end up ceramic coating that whole piece. But essentially being able to carry the brunt of the load and the weight of the turbo on this actual, oh, it's not quite a 45, but this angled piece that's then sitting down with the full weight onto the chassis. That way, most of the weight of the turbo is going to be held onto with the downpipe bolts, but then I'm also going to need to brace and find a way to be able to fasten the up pipe bracket onto the chassis in some kind of similar fashion. I might be able to run some brackets out over here onto the side, right? And so I've got everything, and maybe then back down onto this pipe. So it should give me a pretty good triangulation, maybe again then just down off onto here, just kind of get a triangle, almost like a tripod connection on that piece. And once I have that on there, then there should be, you could do chin-ups off of these bars when everything is all done, but that should give us a good solid connection onto all of these different pieces. So that is the plan. I'm going to try to triangulate this mount off of these as well, so everything can kind of be bolted in place. So the tricky part is that you've got nuts and studs going this way and this way, so everything needs to be able to come together and be taken apart without a whole lot of you don't want to seal it. It's like painting yourself into a corner here if you do those different pieces. So that's some progress. Next thing is I'm going to get that triangulation done. Once I have everything all tack welded in there, then I should be able to pull everything out, do the finish welding, and then bolt everything back up again to see how it all goes. Okay, everything is tack welded in place. So I created essentially an arm bracket coming up here from this center tube that I've welded in a nut in there. Formed a piece of steel to go around the curvature of the bar itself. Brought some tube up here, have it actually welded in, and then some angle coming back here to another tab on the back. So everything is in place, and literally I could jump up and down on this turbo. It is not going anywhere. So good solid mount on there. So next step really is to finish weld a bunch of this stuff, try to make it look as pretty as possible. Probably gonna box in the back here as well. Eventually gonna need to cut this all around here as well to be able to shape this coming back out. But yeah, now it's really just about tearing it all apart and doing the finish welding. We can see here that I've got my 2 tubes for my twin scroll coming out of the bottom here. Should be able to bring some angle tube coming out of there back down into, probably do it in 2 sections. Probably have a piece coming down into here with a flange back down onto another flange. I'll just get laser cut flanges and weld them together. Put some flex pipe in there. Yeah, and we should be rocking. Might even be able to pick up some of the points at the side of the engine here where it was mounted on before, but not quite sure. So yeah, that's the general idea, is being able to mount that all the way back in here and get my finish welding all done. Like I said, probably this rear piece with these 2 arms, I'll probably get the whole back here all ceramic coated, so it'll get all sandblasted down and ceramic coated to look nice. on the back. Who knows, maybe I'll do the same thing with the housing here too, just to clean up all of the crummy rust that comes along with it all. But yeah, overall that is the general setup, and then we will have straight to cat and exhaust coming back here with a muffler. Okay, so on to doing some finish welding. Okay, so we have all of our finish welding done here. We've got the main up pipe mount where it's going to go into the bottom of the turbo. So we've got all of our bars, all our finish welding, cleaned it up as much as I can. Likely get this thing sandblasted or media blasted before doing some kind of ceramic coating on it. And then we've got our top bar that's holding the down pipe. Cut off the bottom of the pipe here too to be able to get some access if I want to do some fabrication. It's going to have to turn a little bit as this sits here. It's going to have to turn a little bit to come out to the cat and then the exhaust in the back. Didn't have to actually box in the back of it here. Had lots of contact area with the bars, so it was all I was going to do is add more weight to this unit. So I decided not to box it in, but all the finish welding is done, so last step is just to get it all bolted into the car. Well, there we have it. Our turbo is installed, it's on there secure. We're gonna make sure that we have some flex pipes on there so we don't get any cracks in any of the welds. But super happy on how this came out. Still being able to have kind of that low profile to our roof, heading down here over to our exhaust. So I'm excited about being able to have everything all line up. Plumbing is going to be very interesting to make everything work in this small place for all of the intercooler piping, intakes, and that kind of stuff. But overall, successful couple of days in the shop. 2 full days to try to get all of this done. Really excited. Looking good. When these get ceramic coated, should look really, really nice. And then obviously I'll be cleaning up everything around the engine once all the fabrication is done. But that's all there is for this episode. I'm sure we'll tackle another interesting project next.